So let's talk about how we get this sort of bomber style neckline where the ribbing tapers down into the edge of the front placket. I have attached my ribbing at the center back and at both shoulder, they're not really the shoulder points, but a little bit below those shoulder points at the quarter marks. And this final quarter of my ribbing needs to stretch all the way over to the front placket. But instead of aligning this raw edge of the ribbing, what I need to do is mark my seam allowance on both the ribbing and on the sweater. So I'm going to be attaching this ribbing with 3/8 inch seam, which is pretty standard for knits. And I'm just going to mark that 3/8 seam allowance here on the sweater. And then what I want to do is I want this corner to be coming to that 3/8 point, but I do not want any of these raw edges to show. So I also want 3/8 of an inch overhang on my rib. So I'm just going to mark that 3/8 of an inch there as well. And those are my 2 points that I'm going to bring together. My 3/8 of an inch on the rib is going to come up and touch the 3/8 of an inch point on the sweater. And I'm going to pin that little corner there. And what you'll notice is when I have that, and once I connect the ribbing to the sweater, when I fold that down, that ribbing is going to lay flush against the front placket and will be top stitched down in the final step. So with that attached, now I have to stretch my ribbing to fit this neckline, also taking into account that some of this rib is going to be removed or cut off. So I like to just see where it naturally wants to go when I fold it up in place. And when I do that, it's about maybe a 45-degree angle triangle that I'm cutting off here. Any more steep and I would get some bubbling in the fabric, but I do want that sort of steep slope there at the end to get that kind of bomber style look. So with that first pin in place, then I'm just going to sort of slowly stretch my rib, taking care not to stretch out the sweater neckline. And I like to just pin from the center and then move my way out, making sure that I'm evenly distributing the stretch throughout the neckline. And from there, I have that last part in place. And what I will be doing to ensure that I get a nice, that I catch all these layers is I will be sewing this from the wrong side. I like to typically sew my ribbing from the ribbing side to make sure that there's no bunching. But what I'm going to do to ensure that I keep a nice 3/8 inch seam allowance all the way around here is sew from the wrong side. Ensuring that my final stitch happens right at this join here of the sweater and the rib. So with my neckline now completely pinned in place, I'll go to the machine and sew from one point all the way around to the other, making sure that I back tack at the beginning and the end. So we've attached the neckline and I have trimmed off that little triangle that was here. And I did not trim off this little overhang here, and I want to show you why. When we leave that there, that will fold down and serve as essentially a little bit of a way to keep these raw edges inside, and we'll finish our seams here with either a zigzag or a serger, but then this end portion here will just serve as a little way to end that off before we top stitch down this bulkier seam allowance. So that's a pretty nice thing. So definitely make sure you leave that little bit for folding over. And another thing to consider when you're finishing this neckline, because of all the layers with the pleat and this back facing, this seam here gets a bit bulky when pressed flat. It is possible to top stitch it. However, I recommend maybe going in with your scissors and grading some of these bulkier seam allowances down a little bit here. That will facilitate folding this down after you've finished your seams and top stitching with a little more ease. But yeah, this gives a really nice neckline. Also, as you are pressing, maintain this curve of the neckline so you don't risk stretching it out. It will give you just a nice, beautiful rounded neckline here. Not too tight and not too loose. So there you have it. That's how you add your ribbing to your Eddie Smock sweater.